At every moment of transformation, there is a peak of fear. Not at the very beginning, but right after something inside you clicks. Right after the meditation that opens your heart. After the moment when you finally feel in tune with your future self. As soon as you realize that something has changed and feel like you're about to crack the code, suddenly the fear returns. Your thoughts start racing like mad horses. Your nervous system reacts as if on alarm. Your body shrinks into a ball. You question everything, as if you were a complete layman. It feels like you are regressing. But this is where most people are wrong, because what you are experiencing is not a failure. It is simply friction between your old self, which is dissolving, and your quantum self, which is just beginning to emerge. Many people think that harmony is a constant feeling of calm, as if once you tune into the frequency of your dreams, everything else will be easy. But quantum shifts don't work that way. In fact, the more powerful the timeline you enter, the louder your survival system screams as it approaches. It's biology meets consciousness, as in the famous quote, "The body is the instrument, the mind is the driver." The body's job is to keep you alive based on past experiences, but manifestation, by its very nature, requires you to break out of the confines of the familiar and step into the unknown. Your nervous system resists not the dream, but the unfamiliar signals that threaten its control. Just as your muscles resist when you stretch beyond your normal range, your subconscious resists when you reach for a new identity. This is not weakness, but evidence that you are expanding. This is where most people revert to their old personality, not because they are not ready, but because they do not recognize this resistance for what it really is: a call to regulate, not retreat. A call to stabilize your frequency, not because something is wrong, but because something is working. As Albert Einstein said, in the middle of every difficulty lies opportunity. Here's what no one tells you. Fear doesn't mean you've lost your way. Fear, when observed without judgment, is an indicator of transformation. It's the residue of the old self being displaced by the presence of the new you. According to quantum physicist Amit Goswami, the quantum self is not bound by the limitations of time, space, or personal history. It is a field of infinite potential, a part of you that already exists in harmony with your highest truth. But to access this self, you must turn possibilities into form through intentional observation. And this observation must be consistent, not distorted by fear, panic, or the need to control the outcome. That's why emotional regulation isn't just a healing tool, it's a bridge between where you are now and the version of you that's already living in your desired reality. Joe Dispenza explains it well. Your body responds to your thoughts as if they were real events. When you think fearfully, your body goes into survival mode. When you think in tune with your future, your body recalibrates to this new possibility. But this recalibration doesn't happen instantly. There comes a point where your body is still addicted to the chemistry of your past, even as your mind chooses a new direction. This is the gap, the sacred discomfort, the space between identities where your nervous system wants to take you back, but your soul begs to stay. So here's the truth. Being in alignment does not mean eliminating fear. It means recognizing fear as a signal, not of danger, but of departure. You move away from an identity that was familiar, even if it kept you trapped. You leave behind neural pathways that were wired to limit. You move beyond the gravitational pull of who you have always been. And fear is not a stop sign. It is a sign that you are in motion. So when fear interrupts your shift, you don't have to start over. You don't have to doubt your worth. You don't have to force yourself back into a higher vibration. You have to stop, breathe, observe the fear without becoming it. And remember, your quantum self has already made the leap. Your only job now is to remain consistent long enough to face it. This is the beginning of a new relationship with fear, not as something to be eliminated, but as something to be listened to, deciphered, and alchemized. In the next chapter, we'll delve into what's really going on in your subconscious when fear arises, and how to deal with it without destroying your frequency. Fear is not the enemy. Fear is feedback. It tells you that something new is happening within your energetic architecture that the old self does not know how to process. But here is the paradox. The fear does not come from your quantum self, but from the conditioned body which has been trained to associate stability with limitation. This is where the leap becomes real. Not on your vision board, not in your meditations, but in your biology. Your nervous system wants safety, and anything unfamiliar, no matter how harmonious, expansive, and divine, can feel unsafe if it's not what your body is used to receiving. This is not sabotage, it's a survival instinct. Amit Goswami calls the quantum self the bridge between consciousness and potential. It is not tied to form, but to awareness. And the moment your awareness begins to shift through intention, repetition, or elevated emotion, you begin to access that bridge. But that access does not always feel like bliss. Sometimes it feels like disorientation, like a heat rising in your chest, like tears with no apparent source because your body has to catch up with your choice. Your old patterns are starting to break down. The programs that have been silently running are starting to malfunction. And this malfunction, this shaking, this destabilization, means that the field is receiving a new signal. This is quantum flux in action. Joe Dispenza teaches that the subconscious controls 95% of who we are by age 35. This includes not only your habits and beliefs, but also your biochemical addiction to emotions. So if you have been living in survival mode, in a state of high alert, reactivity, skepticism, and wariness, even joy will seem threatening. The world will seem alien. Expansion will seem uncomfortable. The body will scream what it knows, even if what it knows is suffering. This is why people who begin to love often feel unworthy. Why those who enter abundance begin to panic about loss. Why do those who call for freedom suddenly feel lost? The subconscious does not resist you. It asks, "Are you sure it is safe here?" This is spiritual work that no one glamorizes. Rewiring your nervous system to accept the world as normal, to embrace joy without guilt, to breathe into expansion without holding your breath in anticipation of collapse. You're not just choosing a new timeline. You're training your body to live there. And that requires regulation, not as a task, but as a commitment. It means noticing when your breathing becomes shallow, when your jaw clenches, when your thoughts speed up, and gently guiding yourself back not to perfection, but to presence. So let's make this real. When fear arises in the middle of your shift, what's the first signal your body sends? Does your stomach tighten? Do your hands get cold? Does your chest close? The key to staying in alignment is not to ignore this signal, but to respond to it with awareness. Place your hand on your heart, slow your breathing. Say to your body, "I know you're scared, but we're not in danger. We're just expanding." You don't push the fear away, you sit with it, you love it. And through that love, you give yourself back your signal. When you do that, something subtle begins to change. The fear doesn't go away, but it transforms. It becomes data. It becomes a reference point. It reminds you that the leap is happening not only in your vision, but in your cells. You are not just visualizing the changes. You are becoming the embodiment of those changes. An embodiment, unlike fantasy, has weight. It moves through muscles, breathing, memory. That is why it is practice, not strength, not perfection, but simply practice. Now I want to hear from you. If you feel comfortable, share in the comments. What emotion, feeling, or behavior typically holds you back when you're on the verge of a breakthrough? When we name it, we take back our power. When we share it, we break the illusion of isolation. And when we see it in each other, we remember that no one changes alone. Let's move on. In the next chapter, we'll explore what's buried beneath fear, the unconscious patterns, the emotional echoes, the forgotten wounds that rise up not to stop you, but to finally be seen. The body resists, yes, but so does the unconscious. Because when you begin to transition into a new identity, the mind doesn't just doubt your abilities, it begins to bring to the surface every fragment of self you've abandoned along the way. That's why quantum leaps often feel like emotional ambushes. You begin to align with your abundance, and suddenly old voices whisper that you're being selfish. You try to embody love, and unresolved shame rises like smoke in your chest. You commit to living freely, and part of you cringes with guilt, as if you're betraying someone by becoming more of yourself. Carl Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." This is not just philosophy, it is a lived experience of changing timelines. When you enter the quantum field with clarity, you are not just accessing your highest potential, you are also activating those parts of your shadow that have been woven into your sense of self. And they do not want to sabotage you. They want to be acknowledged, accepted, and integrated. In the context of quantum leaps, this means that every time you leap, you awaken parts of yourself that have been silenced by survival. These may manifest as fear, self-doubt, jealousy, and even anger. Not because you are broken, but because these parts of you were created to keep you safe in an outdated environment. They learned to shrink so you wouldn't attract criticism. They learned to please so you wouldn't be abandoned. They learned to dull their feelings so you wouldn't feel the pain of rejection. And now as you reach out to a new field of possibilities, those old survival codes kick in again, not to destroy you, but to test whether you're truly choosing something new. The test is not external, it is vibrational. Are you willing to stay centered when your inner child panics? Are you willing to hold your frequency when an old wound is reactivated? Are you willing to respond to discomfort with presence rather than with imagination? This is real consciousness work. Not to bypass your fear with love and light, but to meet your fear with maturity, tenderness, and truth. And here is the most powerful truth of all. The shadow is not trying to pull you back. It is trying to join you. These scared, repressed, wounded parts of you are not obstacles to your expansion. They are parts that need to be brought into alignment with your expansion. When you integrate these parts instead of rejecting them, your frequency does not just rise, it stabilizes. Because now you're not wasting energy in the form of internal conflict. You're one, you're whole, and wholeness is magnetism. Picture this. You're standing on the threshold of your desired reality, and fear rises. Most people try to suppress it, but you do something different. You sit down, breathe, and say, I see you. You're welcome here. We're going anyway. At that point, you're not just jumping, you're leading. And that leadership becomes a signal, a vibrational signature that the field can respond to. Because the quantum doesn't need you to be perfect. It needs you to be clear. Clarity is not the absence of fear. It's your willingness to move with it, to breathe through it, to carry it gently, rather than let it rule you. It is an internal revolution, a shift that sustains itself. Not because you have eliminated every shadow, but because you have stopped casting them. And that is what makes you trustworthy for the timeline you are calling upon. You don't fake it until you make it. You heal it until you embody it. That is quantum wholeness. And it's felt far beyond the words you speak or the affirmations you repeat. It's in your gaze, in your breath, in your posture, in your presence. And once your presence becomes aligned, once your energy stops fighting itself, the field has no choice but to organize itself around you. And that brings us to perhaps the most important part of the leap. Knowing how to stay in the flow when everything inside you wants to retreat. Not forcing, not controlling, but gently retuning, constantly, with love. That's where we're headed. You already know how to visualize. You already know how to set intentions. But the real leap happens when your inner world begins to tremble. And instead of running away, you stay, you watch, you feel, and you choose not to collapse. That's where you go from being a student of manifestation to being an embodied quantum presence. Not by pushing fear out of your system, but by staying with it long enough for it to transform. Because that's what most people don't understand. Regulation is not about suppressing your emotions. It is about staying aware while they are flowing through you. It is about being an observer without losing your center. When you stay aware in discomfort, when you soften instead of harden, when you breathe instead of tense, you are literally sending a new signal to your nervous system. You are teaching your body to feel safe within the expansion. And that is the foundation of sustainable transformation. You don't have to be in a perfect emotional state to be in harmony. You have to be honest. You have to be compassionate with yourself. Harmony is alignment, not control. It is the decision to continue to tune into the field of your future self, even when your old self whispers fear. This is the balance that most people miss. They chase high vibrations, thinking they must always feel euphoric, but the field does not respond to your mood. It responds to your consistency. Your job is not to be fearless. Your job is to be free with your energy, To know when your heart is closing and to gently open it again. To know when you are operating from survival and to return to trust. Know when the mind is spinning stories and return to the truth of your breath. In these tiny choices over and over again, your new reality is being formed. The quantum field does not operate in time. It operates in frequency. This means that the desired timeline is never far away in linear distance. It is a shift in vibration. And this shift often happens subtly, quietly, in those moments when you decide to stop reacting and start breathing. It's in the way you rise from your chair, the way you respond to a difficult message, the way you hold your back when doubt creeps in. These are not small details. They are inscriptions in the vibrational code you emit. Let's make this tangible. Imagine you're in the middle of your quantum shift. You've been visualizing, you've been practicing presence, but suddenly something triggers you. A memory, a failure, a comment. Your stomach drops, your chest sags, your thoughts spiral. In this moment, you have a sacred choice. You can go back to the old timeline, or you can stop. You can take a deep breath. Exhale slowly and remind your body, we are not going back. You place your hand on your heart and whisper, we are safe, we are expanding, and I choose to stay. This is how quantum flow becomes your default, not by resisting your waves, but by learning to ride them. When your body wants to close, you soften. When fear pulls you, you return. You do not suppress the emotions. You feel them fully without losing your signal. And in doing so, you become more than a manifester. You become a transmitter, a stabilizer of timelines, a creator of coherence in a chaotic world. When you choose to regulate instead of retreat, your field becomes magnetic, your timeline stabilizes, and the quantum responds not only to your desire, but to your commitment. And if you've walked this path with us, if this message has reached you where you are, and you feel something real shifting inside of you as you listen, then consider joining this space by subscribing to the channel. This is more than just content, it's a transmission. And you're not just watching, you're participating in your own shift. Let's continue. In the final part of this journey, we will bring it all together. You will see how everything you have felt, encountered, and navigated does not push you away from harmony. It enhances it. And the truth is, you are further than you think. You have mastered it. Not just this video, but something much bigger. Your inner resistance. That thin wall between who you were taught to be and who you were becoming. And even if it didn't seem dramatic, even if there were no fireworks or emotional breakdowns, you still moved. Because every time you chose presence over panic, softness over defense, breathing over collapse, you jumped. And quantum leaps are rarely loud. They happen most often in silence, in the stillness of the decision to remain in harmony no matter what. There is a misconception that spiritual growth is a linear process, that once you learn the tools, you will never fall again. But falling is not failure, it is feedback. It is a field reminding you that your job is not to avoid human emotion, but to move through it at a higher frequency. Harmony is not a permanent state. It is a living relationship between your awareness and your vibration. Some days it is flowing, some days it is shaky. What is important is that you keep coming back, over and over and over again, because coming back is a ritual. Coming back is a leap. And the more you come back to the signal of your quantum self, the more natural it becomes. Not because the fear is gone, but because the fear is no longer driving. You are. You've probably already realized that the version of you living the life you want was never far away. That version wasn't waiting in another country or another decade. It was vibrating on another channel, right here, right now. And every moment that you adjust, breathe, and choose your new frequency, that version gets closer. Not as a fantasy, but as your embodied identity. That's how real transformation happens. Not by force, not by perfection, but by practicing truth in chaos. Remembering who you are when your past calls you back. By choosing to honor the version of you that sees beyond fear and still says, we continue. And when you continue, when you refuse to give up your shift, just because fear whispers louder than usual, you become something rare. You become trustworthy, not in the eyes of others, but in the field itself. The universe begins to respond to your consistency. It greets you with new clarity, harmonious possibilities, unexpected revelations, because now your signal is no longer fragmented by internal conflict. It is aligned. It is magnetic. It is yours. There is no timeline you are not worthy of, no frequency too far to reach. The quantum does not guard possibilities. It simply reflects what you embody. So if you're listening to this right now and part of you is still wondering if this is working, let this be your confirmation. It is. Every time you choose to stop instead of panic, to breathe instead of tense, to observe instead of react, you're breaking another loop. You're unhooking another old pattern. And that's the leap. You are not behind. You are not broken. It is not too late. You are moving. You are remembering. You are opening. So take a moment right now to acknowledge that, to soften your body, to exhale slowly, to return to your timeline, not with despair, but with devotion. And maybe you will feel it, the subtle electricity of a new reality, humming just beneath the surface. The quiet thrill of choosing alignment when everything inside wants to run. That's your signal. That's your quantum self already holding the frequency for you. So now what? You keep going. You let it build. You let it deepen. And when the next wave of fear comes, and it will, you won't be surprised. You will be ready, not to fight it, but to breathe with it, to move through it, to hold your signal steady until the field responds again. And it will, because once you begin to move from reaction to regulation, from emotion to alignment, from survival to embodiment, the leap will cease to be a theory. It will become your life. You are already living the shift. You are the creator of your reality, not just an outside observer. If you are ready to take your destiny into your own hands, then subscribe to the channel and open the door to the world where your dreams come true.